Hi, and welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you as always for joining me. Just a little bit of housekeeping as always. You don't need to like, follow or subscribe. I just put the videos out there where I can and have a holly jolly great time doing so. Now, in today's video or tonight's video or whenever you choose to watch any of my videos, we're going to be talking about making a custom tunnel portal. In my situation, where I've got the backline, and you've seen in the previous video I'd made the forest thing, I need to get this sort of connected up a little bit. And prior to building the forest section and all the rest to try and get a base measurement, I researched a whole bunch of different types of portals and tunnel openings that maybe I could use to come up with something. Thinking maybe I could get a kit one and cut it down to size and basically get what I needed, including this one, which as you can see is just a foam cutout that we'd take out, but it looks a bit too European and a bit too curvy for what I'm doing. So I did invest a bit trying to find a solution. Of course, because we've got this customized backline here, we needed something that would fit specifically into the place and still allow the two trains to pass through. So after going through all of this, I decided perhaps I need to get a bit adventurous and try and build my own. And that's what we're doing with this foam board. So I watched a lot of videos, and I don't mind telling you that this is my first attempt, so let's not get too carried away. Any of these foam boards will do. However, I will make a note. We've got a traditional one I've been using, which is this Baston XPS handy foam panel, which when you can get it quite cheap is what I'm doing most of the scenery with, and I'm very, very happy. However, it's not all that dense. So when we start to carve independent bricks, it's not quite looking perfect. Again, Woodland Scenics do one, and again, it's not all that much chop. It's also exceptionally stiff and not so forgiving if you make a few mistakes, because I needed a very thin piece down the end for the supporting wall, and well, as you can see when I did it, it snapped off. So, all right, we'll pop that one aside. Then we have a higher density foam. This is still not the one I'm chasing, but it's what I've ended up using. The one I'm talking about is generally a golden honeycomb or almost yellow type of color. And Knauf, I think, are the company that makes it. And if you can find it, it's good stuff, because unlike the green foam box that florists use, which is good stuff, it gets very powdery, it's not going to go the distance, and it's really not a great choice, but it is great to work with. That being said, this is quite good, but if you can probably see by the light, it's a little bit shiny and it's very, very springy back. So as you make your divots into it, it sort of tends to come back. So it's not ideal, but this is what I had, and it's the best one out of the three I've got to work with. So during the process, as I said, the Woodland Scenics one for this, that's really not much chop at all. Let's put that to the side. This was a first attempt I did using the green one, as you can see, and not too bad, but of course it was starting to look quite good for a moment. Unfortunately, when I took some spray paint, obviously it started to melt and react and started to go rather bad. So that's no good. But as you can see, that was the geometry I needed to do, and it fit quite nicely. So it wasn't so bad. And I experimented with spray paint, and there's some discoveries we'll see toward the end of the video. And here, of course, is the final product that we have come across. Ooh, I don't want you to see too much, or what would the video be about? But of course, I did use the blue, and we did get some results, even if they're not perfect. But let's dive into the build process and see how it all came about. I thought we might just do something a little bit different. Again, borrowing from the pages of the Oracle that is fellow Queenslander Luke Towan's video. I thought instead of doing the time lapse that I usually do, I'll shoot lots of raw footage, break it up, and I'll voice over accordingly. So tell me what you think in the comments if you prefer me doing videos this style or with the time lapse.
So we begin now with some reasonably rudimentary measurements just to see how much space we've got to make this fit in the necessary place, especially now that we have our magnificent hillside forest section complete. and our signal box in place. So you can see I obviously have the first attempt, which we'll have a quick chat about shortly. Trying a few different foams here. I'm still not 100% satisfied on the high density one I've got here because it's still a bit glossy and bouncy and springs back a bit too much. I know the exact one I need to get, and I did have it years ago, and I'm sure we'll find it again. For those of you in Australia, Knauf, Knauf. The yellow one is the one you want to get. It is readily available in places, just never where I can seem to find it. We then zip over to the hot wire cutter and we make our more strategic cuts as necessary. Once we're quite happy with that, we can bring it back over, check that it all fits nicely. Now we're going to take a little bit of time with the ruler and make the more intricate measurements now for the brickwork, basically working on that sort of 1/2 mil between each brick as required. Just using any type of blade to sort of run across the lines for creating the brickwork. You then sort of want to score it open a little bit. Again, I just take the blade and sort of bend it backwards and forwards. This is where the higher density foam, or possibly the florist's foam, which is fantastic but is not ideal for the long-term purpose of what we're up to. But if you've ever used florist foam before, or you've received flowers and you've seen this little green foam in the bottom of the box, it is fantastic. It just won't go the distance for our application. Now it's just a matter of sealing the foam up. A few ways you can do it. I think the best way is to obviously just take some Mod Podge. Now, because I need to get it from a white, I need to get it into that more of a darker color. My best advice here, there's no real measurements, just take a series of 50% Mod Podge and mix it with 50% black paint. In fact, to be fair, the more black paint you can get in, the better the result is going to be. But basically work on a combination of 50-50. Do take note here, you could mix up large batches of this and put them into an airtight container and screw the lid on, and then you can come back and use it later. I do apologize because while I'm doing this voiceover, I've got a cavalier sleeping to the left of me and a cavalier snoring to the right of me. That's what that sound is, if you're wondering. Now, when it comes time to sealing this, the best approach to applying this is to take your brush, dip it into some water, then into your black paint and Mod Podge mix, and then just brush it on. Again, keep repeating that process. We don't want to water this down too much, but this seems to be a good way of getting a nice application in. And you do want to make sure you're brushing it and getting it into the bricks accordingly. Most of these steps I'm proceeding with, I'll generally do and leave overnight till I come back. Now we need to apply a bit of color. Now, in this case, I was just going on an original demonstration. I would have been better staying probably with some grays and or sandstone, and I think we'll use the more yellowy sandstone effect at the other end when we construct the portal that opens up to our coastal section. And I'll probably try for some slightly bigger block looking bricks in that one. But here we are. So the trick is I'd recommend taking 4 to 5 different colors, and you're just going to apply them to each different brick and or stone. The other thing is what you want to do once you've basically got a good coverage of them all is then mix those existing colors together and intermix them, so you're sort of getting a pretty good coverage and probably ending up with closer to maybe 16 shades of different colors across the bricks. And I think, as you can see here, as we start spotting them around, we're getting a really, really nice effect. Does look a bit cartoonish and comical at the moment. Of course, we're going to tame that down as we start blending it together. Now, what I would recommend doing is taking a shade of grout that you think would look applicable in your brickwork. I would literally just take maybe half a teaspoon and then half a teaspoon of plaster of Paris in dry form. We're just going to mix them together, deposit some of that across our brickwork, and just taking a brush, we want to basically work it down into the places. Once it's in, just try and give it a light dust off on the excess on top of the bricks. Don't panic too much. Then we can just take, in this case I'm using ballast freeze because it's got an excellent way of dispersing it out, and works quite well without needing a pre-treatment. However, if you're doing your PVA mix, that'll work well. You may just need to squirt the water on. Again, we're using a foam and minimal reactions can be achieved on the instructions I'm giving you here. But by all means, this is my first attempt and I'm no professional like the others. We'll give that another 24 hours to dry and we return, and we're now going to paint the top row of bricks now. Of course, we're just going to do them in a sort of a bluey grey or whatever shade of colour you're looking for. There's no rule book on this one, and I very well will probably redo this portal again, but it's a whole bunch of fun just trying these things. I'm then going to come back with some AMIG light olive drab green, and I just take a very fine brush and just go along sections where it would be shaded and you'd get some light little bits of mold or moss, that can start growing. We're now going to come back with some slightly lighter colours of paint in situations where you might use a bit of a matte white. I'm going to use just a couple of the more sort of lighter browns that I have, sand brown. Going to take a fine brush and I'm just going to run a few little streaks running down the wall just to give it a bit of texture there. Then I take a little bit of Vallejo khaki green and running it across a toothpick or perhaps a fine pair of tweezers with a stiff brush, just stipple the effect down so you've just got a few little droplets, fine little droplets falling on the top just to give it a little bit of texture. Give us that nice appearance of a little bit of lichen that's been growing across the top. Now I just take a little bit of our dark wash and I'm just going to pop it onto a sponge and just gently bleed a little bit across the brickwork, just touching it on the tops and using a light sponge, just giving it a little bit of a dab. Probably went a bit too heavy there, but based on where mine needs to be, I don't think that's a bad thing. We're just basically blending it all together. Now my little finishing touch here is because obviously we did and or do have some steam trains still running on the line. Of course, it would have seen its fair share of the smoke coming out of the stack when it's coming out of the tunnel. So as a result, I'm just taking some DCC Concepts black powder, pop a little bit on a light makeup brush or something like that, just really fine that you can just dust along and then just spread out to create that kind of poofed out look of how it would be coming through. Now we're just going to take a little bit of PVA across the top where those top row of bricks are, or paving bricks, and we're just going to put some in. Now I'm going to take a little bit of road base or just really fine golden type of ballast color or something like that would do. I'm just using our road base material from the Woodland Scenics Road kit that we've been using, and we're just doing it there to create that little bit of a border. Now we're going to come through with our static grass, get our glue down, and all in the same hit. I'm just going to keep, because it's so small, I just reapply it. I'll let what has come through fall onto our baking paper, and then I can recycle that straight back in the hopper and go again. I'm pretty sure I went 4 or 5 times just with the same thing, and the static grass being used is basically just 2.5 mil, 4 mil, 2.5 mil, and 4 mil, and I think there's a couple of strands of 7 mil in there as well. And I'm using a combination of spring green, a little bit of the light green, a little pinch of medium, and a little pinch of dark as well, all mixed up there. And that's just going to blend reasonably seamlessly because that was the same combination I've been using for that hillside forest blend where it's linking into. Now just a quick look and admire my little handiwork, check that it fits into place, and that's basically what we have come up with. It's been a whole bunch of fun, and I think we'll probably try and do another one again, building on the experience that we've had from this. Now, for the life of me, I can't find the original picture that you saw in the opening where I did my first attempt at a portal. And it was looking quite good. I had the bricks looking better than what I did now. And most importantly, the colour that I had based it down in was exactly what I was going for. And then going to lighten it up with some lighter browns. But it obviously didn't work when the spray paint was applied. So I'm not ruling it out completely. What I have learnt about it is it's best if you do it from a distance. Don't go too close, or as you can see from the footage here, when we do go too close, it reacts and starts to melt that foam away. So if you just stay back a bit and then apply it, you'll be fine. Again, if there is a specific colour you really want to achieve with your airbrush or with your spray can, you might want to apply. My top tip would of course be to perhaps put down your Mod Podge, and you may need to use a white paint instead of a black one to basically seal the foam, and then you're going to be just fine. Again, a lot can come down to the original colour of what the foam is. If you're working with that Woodland Scenics one, which is a white, well, that might work in your favour. Otherwise, you might have to seal it in the black like I had to do. Or vice versa, perhaps you've got a darker colour and you need it to go lighter. Either way, you can still spray if so desired. You just might need to do a few light coats as you proceed.
Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, once again, that's going to bring us to another conclusion for yet another video in the series. Well, I think it turned out quite well. And if we just slot it into that place, as mentioned, again, I like this modular thing. We take things in and out. That's not too bad, and from a distance that you're looking at, I think that's pretty much a pass in my books. We'll put a few shrubs and things to go into it and tidy it up as needed, but pretty much that's the process. As mentioned, I am going to come back and I'm going to redo that again as I've got some more time and if I can get some better foam. I'm not going to say it was a thoroughly enjoyable process, but I did like the results I could yield out of it in a reasonably short space of time. So we're going to go and explore that later on when we've got a bit more of a completion going on. As always, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll certainly look forward to seeing you in the next one. Where to from here? Well, that's an excellent question. I guess we better pull our heads in and get on with creating another tunnel portal over on the other end of this tunnel, and we're going to be working hard on that coastal scene. But until then, stay safe. Toodles!